So chemical buffers and respiratory system rapidly minimize our pH changes so that we can stay within our normal range. And so chemical buffers, these are the first line of pH regulation. And again, they act within a fraction of a second. It consists of compounds that are already within the fluid compartment. So this is why they act within a fraction of a second, because these are things that are already available. They're already in the fluid compartment. So as soon as we are outside of our normal range, we can use these chemical buffers to act immediately to bring us back into homeostasis. So these chemical buffers will combine with hydrogens, because remember, if you have a low pH, that means you have high hydrogen ion availability or a lot of free-floating hydrogen ions. And so when pH drops, these chemical buffers will combine with those free-floating hydrogens to bring the hydrogen levels down and the pH back up. And then also these chemical buffers, when pH rises above normal, which means we don't have enough hydrogen ions available, they will release more hydrogen ions into the fluid compartment in order to bring that pH back down to normal. Protein buffers are first. They are the most important type of buffer that we have in the intracellular fluid. So inside the cells, this is what we use first and most commonly, but they can also act within the plasma. So they do work within the plasma, but they are most important inside the cell. Because like I mentioned before, the side chains on the amino acids that are going to determine the protein folding, they act as weak acids and bases in order to help regulate our pH. We won't get into too much detail, just know those facts about protein buffers. The bicarbonate buffer system is next. You should already be familiar with this, and let me make sure I'm following along in your lecture notes. As hydrogen ion concentration rises and pH drops, we're going to use this bicarbonate buffer equation in order to bring that pH back down. So when we have too many hydrogen ions, those hydrogen ions can combine inside the red blood cell with bicarbonate ions that we keep in the plasma, if you remember. Hydrogen ions are going to combine with bicarbonate ions to make carbonic acid. That carbonic acid is then going to get converted with the use of carbonic anhydrase, which is the enzyme that's going to facilitate this reaction. That carbonic acid is going to get converted into CO2 and water, and then we can release that CO2. On the opposite end, if we have not enough hydrogen ions available, we'll do it in the opposite direction. We'll take CO2 and water and use carbonic anhydrase to convert it into carbonic acid. And because it's an acid, it's going to immediately dissociate into a bicarbonate ion that we will send out to the plasma, because that's how it gets transported, and then a hydrogen ion to help bring that pH back down. Okay, I think that's good. Okay. And then one note at the end of this section in your lecture notes, we do have a phosphate buffer system as well, but we're not going to get into that in this class this semester. But no, it exists. So when chemical buffers in the blood are saturated, blood pH is going to drop. Make sure that you know acidosis is much more common than alkalosis. We produce a lot of hydrogen ions. We just gave all the examples of the acids that we produce through protein breakdown, anaerobic respiration, the development of ketone bodies in certain situations. And so we make a lot of acid. And so hydrochloric acid too. And so because we make so much acid, acidosis is much more common than alkalosis. So when we use up all of our chemical buffers to balance pH, our pH will likely drop. And so respiratory rates go up in order to get rid of CO2 if blood is acidic. Now, why or how does that happen? So if blood is acidic, we would expect, and let me go back to that page in my lecture notes. If blood is acidic, we are going to expect a pH that's normal, sorry, a pH that is less than our normal range. So it's going to be less than 7.35 if we are acidic, because remember the normal range is between 7.35 and 7.45. And I guess you can make a little bit of a note here. Less than 7.35 is considered acidosis. and greater than 7.45 is considered alkalosis. And again, alkalosis is considered, or acidosis is much more likely to occur than alkalosis. And so if your blood pH is acidic, that means we are less than 7.35, which means that we have a high concentration of hydrogen ions that are available. And so in order to get rid of those extra hydrogen ions and bring that pH back up to normal, we are going to shift this equation to the left. So we're going to take those free-floating hydrogens, we are going to combine them with bicarbonate to make carbonic acid, and then carbonic anhydrase is going to convert that carbonic acid into CO2 and water, and then we are going to breathe that CO2 out into the atmosphere. So in order to combat this low pH through our respiratory system, after we've used up all those chemical buffers, we just increase our respiration rate so that we're getting rid of CO2. And as we are getting rid of CO2, we are also getting rid of these free-floating hydrogen ions. So that should bring our pH back up to normal and bring this hydrogen ion concentration back down. Okay, so we're going to go and look at an example in the opposite. So what if blood is alkaline? If blood is alkaline, we would expect the pH to be greater than 7.45. And so that means we have too little hydrogen ions available. And so in this case, in order to combat that and release more hydrogen ions into the fluid compartment, that is going to force us to shift this equation to the right. We are going to combine CO2, and I'll do this in a different color so we can mark the changes. We are going to combine CO2 with water with the use of carbonic anhydrase to make carbonic acid, and then that carbonic acid is going to dissociate into a hydrogen ion and a bicarbonate ion, and that makes more of these free-floating hydrogens. And so that should bring our pH back to normal. We'll experience a decrease in pH back to normal. And we'll also increase our hydrogen ion availability. How we do that is by doing the opposite of what we did with acidosis. So how our respiratory system helps us when we're alkalosis is we are just going to decrease our respiration rate. And so we're holding on to more of this CO2 because we're slowing down our breathing. We're not getting rid of that CO2 as fast. We slow down our breathing, hold on to more of this CO2. It forces this equation to the right, and then we make more of these hydrogen ions available, which is going to decrease our pH back to normal. So make sure you understand and know when it's appropriate for us to shift this equation to the right and shift it to the left. So what happens when someone hyperventilates? So when someone hyperventilates, and I'm gonna write some notes here for you. When someone hyperventilates, we are increasing respiration rates, and we are increasing CO2 offloading. I just got a message. I don't know if you can see that, but hopefully you can't. It's about a meeting that I'm supposed to attend. Okay, so when someone hyperventilates, that means, well, one, to know what hyperventilation is, and I think we talked about this with respiratory system. With hyperventilation, you're breathing out much more than you're breathing in. So it's okay. And so you're getting rid of a lot of CO2. Okay. When you get rid of a lot of CO2, and I think I might put this, yes. When you're getting rid of a lot of CO2, you are forcing this equation to the left in order to make those CO2 molecules to get rid of. And so how you do that is you are combining bicarbonate with hydrogen ions to make carbonic acid in order to convert that with the help of carbonic anhydrase to make more CO2 molecules that you can get rid of. Okay, but usually when you hyperventilate, this is because of stress or pain or some kind of either physical or emotional trigger. Okay, a lot of times it's emotional. And so normally you start off at homeostasis, your blood pH is fine, everything is normal, but something catastrophic happened in your life, or you have something that's so super nerve-wracking, and you start to hyperventilate and you start to freak out over it. Well, now what you're doing is you're getting rid of available hydrogen ions, you're bringing hydrogen ion concentration down, you're bringing pH up out of its normal range when you are already in homeostasis. So this is you increasing your pH when your body did not require it. And this was because of some kind of stressful occurrence, painful occurrence, either physically or emotionally, and it caused you to hyperventilate. And so what ends up happening here, like I just described, is that hydrogen ions are no longer free floating and leads to physiological alkalosis, which physiological alkalosis can cause fainting. So many times if someone sees you hyperventilating, they may hand you a paper bag, and it should be paper, not plastic. They may hand you a paper bag so that you breathe into it. And when you're breathing in and out of a paper bag, you're not really getting rid of that CO2. You're breathing the CO2 into the paper bag, but then you're bringing it right back in. So that should help level your pH and should prevent you from fainting, because if you faint, then you can get a head injury and it can become a much larger issue than what you intended. And so again, breathing into a paper bag or getting the person to calm down and slow down their breathing is another way to help them maintain that homeostasis with pH again. Okay, and I'm going to stop the recording here and we'll do the next one, next key concept on it, the next video.